Welcome to Mediocre Gaming, and today we're playing Deep Rock Galactic. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Zarel. Let's get to it. So today we're doing the deep dive, codenamed Heavy Gorge. But before we get to that, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, smash that subscribe button, and ring that bell to be notified of all future episodes as soon as they go live. So let's get into it. The first stage of the deep dive has you killing 2 dreadnoughts and recovering 1 black box. Now, in addition to that, there are 2 modifiers. Volatile guts, which means that the bugs are going to explode once you kill them, so you don't want to be close to them. And Mactera Plague, which means there's going to be a lot more flyers than normal on the stage. Now, volatile guts works both ways. If you're close to the bugs when they die, then they'll explode and you'll take some damage. If they're near other bugs when they die, those other bugs could also die at the same time, kind of creating a cascade. Now, the black box you might find at the beginning, it might find in the middle, or towards the end, depending on what path you choose. Now, with the black box, you have this bubble that you want to have all of your team members inside of in order to progress the fastest. If you have fewer than the total number, whether that is 1 or 4, then it will go slower. So there are times when it is important, and you should always have at least, I would say, at least two people working towards the objectives at all times, and at least one person looking for resources. Now, with that, want to say that you don't have to play with anyone else in the deep dive if you don't want to. It'll certainly go faster if there are, but if you want, you can just play the deep dive by yourself, or with Bosco. You can play with your friends if you want to, if they also play Deep Rock, or you can matchmake with some online friends. So whatever you want to do. Now, all of the dreadnoughts are a little bit different, but they're all essentially kind of similar, where they're kind of shielded at some point, they're invulnerable at some point, and there is a damage phase at some point. So looking at the health bar, if it's grayed out, they're invulnerable, so don't waste your bullets. If it is red, then that means that you can do damage. If there is a yellow bar in addition, that means they're shielded and you have to take down the shield before you can take out the dreadnought. Now, because it's dreadnoughts and because they have a lot of health, you're going to go through a decent amount of ammo. So when you get, I would say, below 50%, go ahead and call in a resupply pod, and hopefully you've been getting nitra along the way. The resources that you're going to see during your deep dive are going to be gold and nitra, and sometimes morkite if that happens to be one of the stages that you're doing. In this particular one, there is no morkite, so you don't have to worry about that part. Now, gold, of course, will increase your credit score at the end of the deep dive, and nitra will help you get or stay flush with ammo. So it's always a good idea to get all those nitra and gold veins that you see along the way, if at all possible. If you've got a full team with the different classes, it's going to be really easy to get all the resources, no matter where it's at. If you're by yourself, you'll at least have Bosco that can mine it for you. If it's you and like one other person, if one of you is a scout and one of you is a engineer, it could still work. But anything else, it'll be a little bit more difficult. So once you get to the point where you have the black box taken care of and you are done or almost done with the dreadnought, it's time to take a tally of where you're at in terms of resources, how much of the cave that you've explored, and how much you want to put into looking around the cave more after you take out the dreadnought. Because the more time you spend in the deep dive, the more chance you have of something going wrong. So once you decide to move on, go ahead and hit the button on the mule, and you can either follow the mule back to the drop pod, or if you have a good idea of where it's at, or if you're a driller, you can just drill straight to it. So depending on how you want to play it, you can get back there relatively quickly, or at worst, you're going to follow the mule back to the drop pod and go ahead and hop in there pretty much right away. You don't have to wait for the mule to dock. You have to wait for the mule to dock, but if you're following the mule, it's going to be pretty much immediate. Whereas if you're ahead of the mule, you'll have to wait and kind of defend the area until the mule docks, and then you can leave. Now, don't forget that along the way, go ahead and pick up gold and nitra if you happen to see it. You do have a decent amount of time, 5 minutes from when you call it in before it leaves, so you've got plenty of time to pick up those resources and drop them in the side. If it's getting a little bit hairy around the drop pod, you can take it with you. This is a good time to point out that all your resources and health, etc., will carry over from one stage to the next. So all your ammo, whatever health you have, plus whatever resources that you're carrying on you. So if you're not able to deposit it before you get on the drop pod, you'll still have a chance to do it in the next stage. So that is it for the first stage, and you might see some Umanite and Enor Pearl. There was a hoarder. If you happen to come across a hoarder, you will be able to get those stage-specific resources from one of those guys. But otherwise, you won't see them. And that's it for stage 1. On to stage 2. Now, stage 2 has you refining liquid morkite and another black box. And then this has a modifier of elite threats. Now, elite threats means that you're going to have a few bugs along the way that kind of shine red. They're going to have more health, more speed, and more damage. So it's important to take those guys out as quickly as possible as soon as you notice them, because they have the chance of really wrecking some havoc on your deep dive. So the liquid morkite, you're just going to look for the blue flames, and you can hear them as you're going along, so you know that you're at least close. And of course, you see that steam coming out. Request the pump jack, and then connect it up to the rig. Now, you won't be able to pump any morkite until you do the black box. So you have to do the black box first before you can refine any morkite. So even though you have everything hooked up, that doesn't mean that you can go ahead and start it up. You have to do the black box first. Now, you can hook everything up and be prepared, or you can do the black box anytime, whenever you're ready to do it. So if you want to go through and grab some resources, since basically all the resources are right there, since it generally tends to be a large cavernous area for liquid morkite. So go ahead and get everything hooked up, do the black box, and then you're going to be ready to go. Now, just like the last stage, when you do the black box, there are going to be hordes of enemies coming at you, and more than likely an elite enemy as well. But once you get the black box done, go ahead and get those pipelines built so you're ready to go.
Supply drop has been ordered and is on the way.
Now, the more people that are building the pipeline, the faster it'll go. So even if you're at the same segment, it's going to go relatively quickly. Once you start pumping the Morkite, then you're going to have hordes of enemies coming after you, so you're going to need to deal with those, and every so often there'll be leaks in the pipe, so you'll need to take care of those as well. It'll stop the progression, and then once you repair all of the leaks, then it will begin to pump once again. So it's important to go ahead and get those leaks taken care of as quickly as possible so that you can continue to progress through the stage. Now, I would say the best thing to do is to ride the pipelines while the hordes of enemies are coming at you, because the pipeline will act as kind of an intermediary. It'll be easier for you to stay away from enemies, thus not taking damage, and you don't have to look in one direction. Normally you can only look behind you so that you can focus on the enemies coming at you from one direction and not have to worry about enemies coming from every direction. The worst thing I would say is to be on the rig itself. The rig itself is probably the worst place to be when the waves of enemies are coming. With the verticality of the rig itself, plus enemies coming from every possible direction, it'll be difficult to defend yourself since you don't have to worry about the rig. Once you're done, then go ahead and call in the drop pod. And the drop pod's usually in one of the more remote areas of the cavern. So you can take a guess and figure out approximately where that is. And then once it pops up above you, there'll be a green shadow, which is going to be where it's going to drop in. Wait for it to drop, and then you're ready to go. You don't have to wait for a mule, since there's no mule on this stage. Save your ammo if you can. Get on the drop pod and make it out of stage 2 of the deep dive. Now, of course, the deep dive is a raid-like environment with 3 different stages. So now that we're done with stage 2, we're on to the final stage of the deep dive. Now, the final stage of the deep dive has you once again doing the black box and getting 4 alien eggs. However, there are no modifiers on this stage, so it is a little bit more straightforward than the first 2 stages. So I would say the deep dive this week is all about the black box, since it's for every stage. The alien eggs you can find on the terrain scanner, and of course you can see it just visually with that organic matter on the walls. Dig through it to get to the egg. There'll be a little glowing patch if you're not quite sure where it's at. Now, you do have to be aware that each alien egg, I would say, has about a 50% chance of spawning a swarm. Even if it doesn't spawn a swarm, it's going to spawn some enemies, so you do have to be aware of that. So with 4 eggs, you have basically 2 guaranteed swarms that are going to happen throughout the stage, and then in addition to that, you also have the time swarms, which occur at regular intervals after you spend so much time during the stage. So have each other's back, take out the enemies, high value targets you might want to mark. Make sure that you are communicating with your team, whether that is verbally or by using your laser pointer, marking out points of interest or what you're doing, so that your team knows what you're doing, and hopefully they're doing the same for you. So you can say, hey, here's the black box over here, come on, let's do this. Or point out nitra and resources that maybe you can't get to because you're a gunner or a driller, but the scout is close by and you know that they're able to get to it much more readily. Now, once you have all that done, you're practically done with the deep dive. All you have to do is call in the drop pod and get out. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to check us out on social media, and thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. And we'll see you next time.
The mule's been successfully retrieved. Make it snappy, team. The drop pod won't hang around forever.
Get into cover! Fire in the hole! Resupply ordered!
Hang in there. Supplies are on the way. Drop pod departing in T-minus 4 minutes.
I ordered a resupply!
Supply pod requisitioned. Launching now.
Shield charged and ready. Shield up!
Supply pod launched. Better stand back. Supply drop has been ordered and is on the way. Roger that. Supplies are coming.
Rock and stone!
Extraction commencing. Good work.
Time to restock!
Shields ready again.
Rock on!